Should we go? Oh. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest issue of the Caribbean Research Center Speaking Series. And this evening, we're bringing to you a lecture by Dr. Julius Garvey. Tonight, I'm wearing multiple hats, so I'm coming to you not only as the Executive Director of the Caribbean Research Center here at Medgar College, but also in my role as a faculty member with the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences. This evening's lecture is brought to you in collaboration between those two divisions here at Medgar College and one of our new community partners, the Caribbean American Society of New York. I'd like to ask everyone to stand, please, for the playing of the national anthem.
You did mention that you guys have to.
Hold on, Roman, not yours yet.
Oh,
look. All right, here we go.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, Jesus, Star Spangled Banner, yet wave for the land of the brave and the home of the brave.
I'm going to ask everyone to please remain standing as we have a rendition of the Black National Anthem, which is brought to you by none other than Medgar College's professor, Roman Mitchell.
Yes, and this one you guys have to sing along because you look like you know the words, right?
Thank you very much, Professor Mitchell. I'm going to take this time to welcome those people who are, I'm sorry, please be seated. I want to take a moment to welcome those who are joining us live online. As always, we are streaming tonight's event through our YouTube channel, Caribbean Research Center of Medgar College. And it will be available for replay for those who are not able to make it tonight. Others will be able to partake of this or to watch a replay of this at your leisure. All right, at this point in time, I want to invite a few key people to make some remarks. I'm going to start off with our first collaborating partner, the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences. And speaking on behalf of the department is the chairperson, Dr. Maria Delongori.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to start just my opening remarks by asking all of you to acknowledge the Lenape people whose land we are currently standing on. That's something that I like to do because a lot of people don't acknowledge or recognize that the land where this college, right, built in the name of social justice, is standing, and that the people that owned it, well, inhabited it, were forced off.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want us to start with acknowledging that. I also want us to start with acknowledging our ancestors, because if it was not for our ancestors and the resiliency that they showed, we would not be able to stand here, right? If you consider our history and our legacies. And I wanted to mention that because of the legacy that we're about to, the person we're about to hear from, and the legacy that he brings with him is something that I think puts everything in a broader context. Marcus Garvey is a man that I've admired for a very long time. And when we had the opportunity for this collaboration, I could not contain my excitement. I am actually running back and forth between a program upstairs where my mother and my brother-in-law are, and the program here. And my sons are supposed to be here, and if they don't get here, they're going to be in trouble. But because this event meant that much to me. So I would like to thank you for coming. I would like to thank the Colloquium Research Center for partnering with us. And I would like all of you, and I see some of my students out there, so I'm glad to see that you all are here as well. And so I'd like to thank you all for coming and supporting this endeavor.
Thank you, Dr. Delongori. Next, I'd like to invite a representative from the Caribbean American Society of New York, who's collaborating and co-sponsoring this event. So, we owe all of our nice refreshments outside to this new organization. We are looking forward to working with. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Horace Davis.
This is truly a pleasure. And I believe the start of something really good, working with the Caribbean Research Center. My name is Horace Davis, and I am the president of CASONY, and the acronym stands for the Caribbean American Society of New York. The overarching mission of CASONY is to build and cultivate a stronger sense of pride within our community, a pride and a connectivity that really brings us together. Supporting this mission are four main objectives of the organization. The first is to support businesses that support our community, not just in terms of having businesses in our community that we're supporting and our community giving back. That is what's really needed to ensure that dollars are turned around and to our benefit. The second objective of the organization is in the area of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We encourage our children to consider pursuing careers in these areas. We recognize that it is critically important in this time to have an education, but it's also important that that education is aligned with the careers of the future. And so we focus on promoting STEM and also focus on elementary and middle school. And the reason for that is the numbers show 94% of students begin to think about careers for the first time when they're in middle school. And so we want to make sure that in those formative years when they're considering careers and what they want to be when they grow up, they are exposed to STEM, these careers, and it is a consideration. The third objective of the organization is networking. And I don't think I have to say much about that other than the fact that, you know, working together collectively and sharing resources is what networking is all about. And you can see what has happened just in coming together in a very short period of time to have a program like this supported by Dr. Garvey, Dr. Irish. You know, just utilizing all that we have in our community is so important. The fourth objective of the organization is to engage and be involved in the development of policies, legislation, regulations. We have to be at the table when these things are being discussed. These are the forward-looking goals that will help us not having to be at rallies. You know, I always say I don't have a problem with a rally, but if we're having rallies, it's oftentimes too late. We need to be out front and ensure that the legislation, regulations, and policies, whether it's on a city, local, state, federal level, represents the interests of our community. And those are the four objectives that support CASONY. Now, why is this organization, I think, so relevant? When you think about New York City and you think about the immigrant community in New York, as an engineer, I like to look at things in terms of numbers. And what I'll say to you is this: 5 of the top immigrant countries in New York City have one thing in common, and that is they are Caribbean islands. And that does not include Puerto Rico. And so think about the numbers. If we come together collectively as a community, the influence that we can and should have would really make a difference in all our lives. And so that's why this organization means, I think, so much to me and to the community, because that is the basis upon which we are looking to build. Because if you look at New York City, and no matter where you go in the state, Schenectady, Albany, Syracuse, you name it, you will find vibrant, significant Caribbean communities. And imagine what happens if we bring together collectively that community. The influence that we can and should have would be amazing. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Irish. And thank you all so much for coming and being a part of this beginning collaboration with the school.
On that note, I would like to invite our next speaker to the stage. Our next speaker, this is her first of her appearances here in our series. She is the new provost here at Medgar College, where she's working very closely both with the Caribbean Research Center and, of course, with the academic departments to support us in continuing to bring quality education, educational experiences to our students. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce Dr. Antoinette Coleman.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is really, I have to say this first. I've been scripted by Dr. Irish Bramble, and I'm gonna try to stay on the script, but it is such an honor. It is such an honor to be at Medgar College and to have Dr. Garvey here. You know, many of you, as I look out into your faces, I know that you're young, but I was young once. And the things that I don't forget are the teaching of my family. And one of the things that my father and my grandfather insisted on is that we read the writings of our Black people, our ancestors, and for my time, it was Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
I mean, I went into integrated schools talking about Marcus Garvey. And you know what happened? They said something to my parents. And I have to admit this, they're mostly deceased and they won't get me for this. I had an uncle that passed into Harvard. They thought he was a white man until he brought that rainbow of family to the graduation. And then he got debunked. But he went into that school and he said, it's not just Black writings, it's the United States writings. Every writing about a group in this country we must respect. And tonight, to have his son here, we are all honored. And I really feel honored. We have a college named after Medgar Evans. And then we can bring someone here who knows a history maker to our college. We are about social justice here at Medgar Evers College. And I don't want you to ever forget it. When students, when you have your days that you're feeling a little beat down, go find the writings of Marcus Garvey. Go find them. They will uplift you because all of us have been where you are, students. And I know for a lot of my friends, we would go read something by people like us. We would read the writings of Caribbean poets. And we would be inspired in this time when social justice felt just a little uneven. So I just wanted you to know that we share a tremendous history, you know, and to travel the Caribbean. I was born in the United States, but to travel the Caribbean, to work in the Caribbean is an experience that all of us, if you're not from there, go there. If you're from there, go back there, do some work there, and understand how important it is to embrace all people of color. But I better get back on my script before I get fired. So, on behalf, and I just had to do that, and I'll pay for it. Dr. Irish Grammar will ask me for something.
That's all right, that's all right.
But I want to thank our collaborative partners for being here with us. And of course, our department chair, who's always so supportive of everything that the Caribbean Research Center does. And of course, academic affairs, the office of which the Caribbean Research Center is a part of. And most of all, the office of the president. We are juggling between two events, as Dr. Delangoria said this evening. The president's upstairs and they got her stuck upstairs, so you get the second. But
That's all right, we love
the second kind of bumped her out of the way because she just had it. There is no better place than to understand all of our roots. We know that journey where we lost so many ancestors that didn't make it. And we know the route that they took. And their blood, sweat, and tears brought about this institution in a most direct and indirect way. We are a predominantly Black institution. We're just not old enough to be called a HBCU, but we're trying to work on that through legislation, okay? Institutions should be defined by years, I think it should be defined. It should be defined by what you do and who you deliver. So the president is working on that, and I am a proud graduate of an HBCU, but I truly believe that every minority serving institution, particularly the one that serves a population of students, that here, over 25% of our student population is foreign born, internationally born. Of those foreign born students, approximately 60% are of Caribbean descent. So can I claim my percentage? even though I wasn't- okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And 15% come from the African continent. So we're quite diverse. So when I go down to the central headquarters and they talk about diversity, I said, we have diversity. We have diversity in a number of students. We have students from Asia, we have students from the Caribbean, we have students from the African continent. We have students that represent all the little boxes you like to put us in, but we don't stay in boxes. We meld together, we learn knowledge together, and we really support each other. So that is one of the roles of the Caribbean Research Center. They welcome all to there. We continue to work collaboratively with a number of societies, as you see today, across the city. But I have to do the shout out for Dr. Irish Bramble and his thoughtfulness to have such a wonderful series and to be able to bring that takes a bit of work because I know Dr. Garvey's schedule is real busy. I want to thank the senior seminar class who's attending, because as an academic, I always want to see our students in the room. But most of all, really pay attention. Listen to tonight's honored speaker, because you will take away some tremendous information that when you wake up one day, you'll find yourself repeating some of the things that he said. So as not to belabor the point, I want to thank you. I just wanted to say how honored I am that you are here, and
Haven't seen a curtsy in a long time.
so
You did that so well.
You got two? Thank you very much, Provost Coleman. Also joining us tonight, we are honored to have with us former council member and current Department of Transportation Commissioner. We got to talk afterwards about the bike lanes. Anyway, I'm the current Department of Transportation Commissioner, Mr. Doris Rodriguez, to bring us to.
One thing that first of all, thank you to the great group of brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. One thing that, Dr. Garvey, I think that we need to have a conversation about, when we talk about the Black agenda, are the Black from the Latin American part of that agenda? Because we need to have that conversation. You know, in order to have a more powerful, as you would be, sharing with us about, the history about the civil rights movement, Black movement. I feel that, and I can say that I have all the right to bring this item for us to, starting this conversation, listening for you on, the movement here in Latin, in the United States. But when you see Malcolm X, there was a brother from San Pedro Macorís who was with him. When you look at Martin Luther King, there was a brother from Latin America with him too. And I feel that we have been depicting a divide and new conquer.
Yes.
And I was born and raised in the island of Hispaniola. And I'm sure if I ask to this group, who are the first non-Native American who settled in New York City, very few of us you know, but most of us we don't. And he was a free black man, brought by the Dutch in 1613 from the island of Hispaniola that later became Haiti and Dominican Republic. And you Google it, say Juan Rodriguez, the first non-Native American who settled in New York City, you will see his name. And there's a lot of documents in the Dominican Study Institute, they have copies of those documents. When the merchant from Europe, they were fighting for who will control Juan Rodriguez. Juan Rodriguez was as black as any Afro-American. But we have to look at the future of this movement and be able to see our difference. You know, if you go to Samaná in the Dominican Republic, there was a group of Afro-Americans who moved from the south to Samaná. And up to recently, they continue speaking English in that part of the island. They are as black as a brother who is Afro-American from here. When you look at those baseball players, Ricardo Carten, Jorge Bell, they are those family, brothers. Why they had those last names? Well, they were from a Coca-Cola, an English-speaking island of the Caribbean. And they relocated in the east part of the country. And they are as black as any brothers and sisters who moved from the south to New York City. So I just feel that, you know, I had the opportunity to be born and raised in the Dominican Republic by my oldest sister in 1977. She was told that she cannot pursue with a thesis that she wanted to do about the right of Haitian children who are undocumented in DR to be recognized as Dominican the rest of the people. So for me, like when I talk about our Black agenda and how we have to integrate all of us, it's coming from a place that for decades already been influenced by a lot of great men and women who say, when Mayor Adams was running, what I did and had the privilege to lead the Latino campaign for Mayor Adams. But I call my brother from the Caribbean. And I said, it cannot be Latino for Eric Adams. We made a Latino and Caribbean for Eric Adams. So it's your night. It's not only that you are the son or the bride or the great leader, because some people are the son and daughter, but it doesn't mean that they follow, that they took the baton. So when we have someone, Dr. Garvey, who is here, not only to talk about the contribution of his father, but the contribution of the movement of that generation. Guys, this country only had 246 years of independence, okay? So Africa is our motherland, right? If you think about, if you are Chinese, you have 5,000 years knowing who you are. If you are Jewish, you've been told that you've been the one chosen by God for thousands of years. So those of us, I'm tier 4, so I did my 15 years as a teacher. I did my 2 years as a council member. As I was here, I was testing John Gibbs, who was a professor associated at the college, who was a lawyer at that time working for Center for Constitutional Rights, who took my case when I was arrested for the first time in the issue of police brutality. Then together with Jomani Williams, we participated in the Occupy Wall Street. I was arrested. And when we won the lawsuit of $30,000, of course, the mother of my daughter, she wanted to kill me because I needed those $30,000, but I donated to Center for Constitutional Rights because for me it wasn't about the money. It was about to allow us to be listening to you. It's your night, but all I can say is about for future conversation, what is going to be the agenda for the Black movement in this country? Because sometimes if you are from Ghana, from Mali, from Congo, the recent immigrant, you are not seen as together as the same as of American. If you are from the Caribbean, sometimes you are not too Black to be recognized as part of the movement. So I feel that we need to have this conversation. We cannot continue being the victim and divide you conquer, because at the end of the day, 1.1 million students in New York City public school, we invest $35 billion and we fail into that. And that's what I believe with Mayor Eric Adams, we will be reversing that path that we unfortunately have so many young people going to Rikers Island. They can be the commissioner that the society has to achieve.
Commissioner, thank you very much for those inspiring words. And I just want to let you know you're in the right place to have that conversation. So you'll expect the follow-up email.
I hate to come about bike lane.
Yeah, definitely, we'll bring you back. All right. All right, this time I'd like to just change gears a little bit and provide us with a little bit of equally insightful entertainment. And at this time, I'd like to invite to the stage a guy who is not just my colleague, he is my friend of 30 years, my brother. It's more than that, don't tell me, bro. Come on, 30 sounds good enough, right? He's my friend of 30 years, and an established poet and a mathematician. That's an odd combination. You don't hear that very often. All right, ladies and gentlemen, none other than Dr. Wayne Russell. At some point in time, yes.
I wanted to be a singer and a player of instrument, but it didn't work out. So I'm going to share with you a poem. It's called I Am, and it's good to see some of the old warriors here. I'm sorry, warriors here. So I'm going to need some energy from you. Sir Price, family all over. Sir Brown, family. Dexter, I want you to shout, I am.
I am.
Everyone, I am.
I am.
Stay with me. I am.
I am.
I am. I am all things and nothing, yet shaper of dreams, like the line that divides the seen and unseen. And the vastness in time is the oneness in me, surveyor of truth, suspender of galaxies. I'm like the substance in ether. I permeate time, shuttling stars into astrological signs. For past is present and future, that's me. Dispelling your pseudo-Greek mythology. For I span infinity, like infinity is one. Erector of the zenith, house of the sun, I am the everlasting night. The Trinity, the God, the Father, the Negro, all three. Vision of light in the darkness, I am. Power that rage in the darkness, I am. Glory that shines in the darkness, I am. Yes, I am. For I am darkness, absence of light, celestial energy, the brilliance of night. I'm the cradle of civilization, the voice of a nation, the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning, and again, I am. You, me, we. Functions of power, uncharted C4. All of the untold mysteries are watered down conversions of mystical being. Conjure of ethnic chants, cosmic mystical lines, swaying to an ensemble of celestial vibes bursting with energy, transcending all time, spinning the fluid of life with a hype. I'm the vision of tomorrow, dread of today, ill-fated yesterday. I am your salvation. To God, me, we pray. I'm the reminder of injustice, the root of all ill, the servant before you, the power within, the super ego and the id, the builder of pyramids, the true giver of life. I'm the proverbial symbol of darkness in light. So I am. I am. I am. Yeah.
You gotta work on those letters behind your name, man.
Just call me warrior, son.
All right, done deal, done deal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Wayne Russell. All right, so at this point in time, we're at that point in the program where I want to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening. So Dr. Julius Garvey is a retired cardiothoracic and vascular surgeon who has been on tour for the last month, visiting HBCUs, speaking to students, and signing copies of an updated version of the book, The Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, and discussing his father's philosophy and its relevance for today as we face the global exclamation, Black Lives Matter. Dr. Garvey, in his speaking tour, has been discussing Africa's place in the New World Order, reparations, and social justice issues, such as the wrongful conviction and imprisonment of his father by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, the struggles of Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, and others are the bedrocks on which the current generation stands as it continues to fight for peace, justice, and human dignity. Having completed his tour of HBCUs, he has now come to the pinnacle. Medgar Evans College. Is this your last speaking engagement for the tour?
Well, there's something tomorrow morning.
There's something tomorrow morning, all right, so, you know.
Almost the last.
I won't even say it on record. But anyway, here we are at Medgar Evans College, and we would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Julius Garvey. You had a video you wanted to share? All right, here we go.
The year was 1916, when a 29-year-old Jamaican-born man with a love for Africa, pride in African people, and a vision of Pan-African unity, love, and strength, arrived on America's eastern shores, armed with an impenetrable sense of purpose, duty, and destiny. Just 54 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, 51 years after the end of the Civil War, with the vast majority of blacks in America still mentally enslaved, experiencing widespread race-based discrimination, terrorism, despair, black codes, Jim Crow, peonage, and lynchings, and economic collapse in a world at war. 90% of the African continent, colonized by 7 European nations, and Africans throughout the diaspora, systemically oppressed, with few signs of better days ahead. In spite of these things and more, less than 1 decade after his arrival to America, he was leading the largest black movement in the history of the world. His name, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. His organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which he and his first wife, Amy Ashford, previously launched in Jamaica in 1914. Though the ideology of Pan-Africanism was slowly taking hold amongst some during this era, it was Marcus Garvey's vision of a strong, self-sufficient global black nation, along with his fellowship, total commitment, and organizing prowess that was pivotal in taking Pan-Africanism from theory to practice. From May of 1917, when the New York branch of the UNIA was launched, the first branch on American soil, through June of 1923, the accomplishments of the UNIA against all odds and all efforts to stop them grew and grew. These accomplishments include over 4 million members worldwide, even more supporters, over 1,000 branches of the organization throughout 42 countries, the Negro World newspaper, a shipping company, the Black Star Line, the Negro Factories Association, wholesale, retail, and manufacturing businesses, grocery stores, restaurants, laundrettes, a printing press, tailor shop, black doll manufacturing, a trucking company, hotels, farms, a nursing agency, and a paramilitary division established our flag, the red, black, and green, and established the Declaration of Rights of the Negro peoples of the world. The accomplishments made by Marcus Garvey and the UNIA laid a foundation of strength and self-determination that inspired widespread liberation movements, leading to 55 African nations winning their independence. His example is still used as the blueprint for progressive action around the world. Marcus Garvey, elected to serve as the provisional president of Africa by delegates representing 25 countries, was and is a global symbol of Black pride, unity, and self-determination. A symbol that directly or indirectly influenced the trajectory of our greatest heroes and sheroes. From activists such as Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Steve Biko, Ida B. Wells, and Kwame Ture, to nation builders such as Haile Selassie I, Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, Sekou Toure, Elijah Muhammad, Leonard P. Howell, and Jomo Kenyatta. From communities like Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the Harlem Renaissance, from scholars and business leaders to athletes and entertainers, from the early 1900s to this very day. The list of those inspired by the greatness of the Garvey movement and its legacy of Black pride, progress, and knowledge of self is endless. After being wrongfully convicted of mail fraud in 1923 and given a 5-year prison sentence, in 1927, his sentence was commuted and he was deported back to Jamaica, where he and his second wife, Amy Jacques Garvey, were met by the largest and most enthusiastic crowd in Jamaica's history. Marcus Garvey transferred the UNIA headquarters back to Jamaica, ran a daily newspaper called The Black Man, started the first political party, the People's Political Party, and successfully got 3 members of that party elected to the Kingston City Council. This visionary leader, considered one of the 3 pillars of Pan-Africanism and a prophet of the Rastafarian faith, died of a stroke on June 10, 1940 in London, England, at just 52 years of age. He was survived by his loving wife, Amy Jacques Garvey, a brilliant revolutionary in her own right, and his 2 sons, Marcus Garvey Jr. and Julius Garvey, both endowed with their father's progressive vision and revolutionary spirit. From statues, parades, street and school namings, to books, lectures, and the pouring of libations, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Jamaica's first national hero, continues to be honored throughout the world. Though physically no longer with us, the spirit of Marcus Garvey is still felt, his contributions still remembered, and his name still recounted during acts of Black pride, acts of Black unity, and acts of Black liberation to this very day.
All yours, sir.
Thank
All
you.
yours.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to be here at Medgar once again. I think it's okay. I've been to Medgar many times, and I'm glad to see that the room is full. It warms my heart to see so many of you here on this particular occasion during Black History Month. My father, I think you saw a synopsis of his work, etc. He said that he was bringing a revolution. But he said it was a revolution of the mind. And I think it's important for us to understand exactly what that means. Because what has happened to us over time in terms of recent history for the last 400 years is that we've been disconnected from ourselves as African people. And our identity has been replaced with something that's subhuman, if you will, and has been processed through enslavement as well as Jim Crow, sharecropping, and the apartheid system that we have here in the United States of America. Not a great deal has changed in the 100 years since my father was here. As you know, we're still being killed in the street in broad daylight on television. Things have to change. The only way things are going to change is when we change. There's a cartoon that I've seen where there's a table and a lot of people are eating at the table, having a good time, but the table is resting on the backs of black people bent over. And the statement there is that if the black people stood up straight, then that feast would be over. I think it's clear that we still have a way to go. My father, back in 1937, at a lecture hall in Halifax, Nova Scotia, said that we must liberate our minds from mental slavery. Because whilst others may help us free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. As you know, Bob Marley took those words and made it part of Redemption Song. But it's critical, because of course we're no longer shackled physically, but many of us are still shackled mentally. And that was the revolution that he came to bring, was to unshackle our minds. And he located us in terms of identity as who we are. He said a people without the knowledge of their past history, traditions, and culture is like a tree without roots. So we have to go back and learn our history, our traditions, and our culture so that we can be rooted in our history and understand that the black skin is not a badge of shame, but is a symbol of our greatness. And our greatness consists of our being the first people, 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens sapiens. Those are our ancestors. Our greatness consists of our being the first civilizations along the Nile Valley. All other civilizations originate from us as we traveled around the world and civilized people. So we have a great history, and we need to locate ourselves in that history in terms of the timeline. Our history did not start with our being kidnapped and enslaved. When our civilizations were old, Europeans were still living in caves, practicing cannibalism because they were hungry during the Ice Age. So they really have nothing to tell us in terms of how to live, because over time, we have explored all the different ways in which human beings can live together in peace. And I think if you look at the timeline for Europe, you can see that it's one of war World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnamese War, Iraqi War, Iranian War, Syrian War, etc., etc., etc. That is not a civilization. There is nothing about that history that we need to learn from. If we understand our roots, we can learn from our own traditions. Marcus Garvey said that God and nature first made us what we are, and then out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law, and let God and the sky be our limit, and eternity our measurement. If you unpack that, that's a whole cosmology right there. Because what it is saying is that we are one with God, we are one with nature. So that's our Trinity. We are made in the image of God. And we are one with all of nature, including other human beings, including plants, including animals, including the rocks and the mountains and the trees, etc., etc. That's totally different from the individualism and the competition that's a significant part of the Eurocentric system. We believe that we're one with God and nature. That means that we're spirit, mind, and body. Spirit is primary, that's our consciousness. Mind is how we deal with the physical environment, including our own physical body. We're not just human animals responsive to the five senses and using an intellect to satisfy the five senses, where you end up then with materialism and the desire for more and more and more, for self versus other. Again, we believe in the unity of the universe. And that has come down to us through Kemet, the principle of Ma'at, which is unity, order, harmony, reciprocity, peace. Has come down to us through Ubuntu, because you are, I am, because I am, we are. So this is an intrinsic part of our philosophy and our cosmology. It's important that we access that. It's important that we understand our own mind. Again, Marcus Garvey says, mind creates, and as much as we desire in nature, we can achieve through the creation of our mind. As much as you want, you can accomplish. Whatever heights you want to get to, you can accomplish through the active intelligence of your mind. So mind is the instrument that you have to manifest your divine potential. That is your gift in terms of being fully human. I emphasize fully human because I believe that we live in an environment that does not understand the full capacity of the human being. Because again, the spiritual aspect of the human being is ignored. Therefore, the functioning is as a human animal. Just as a cow functions as a cow, it's possible for humans to function as human animals. Again, responsive to the environment through the five senses with an intellect that tries to accumulate as much for oneself versus others in the environment. I think this is why we see the systems that have been created by Europeans are systems that are superficial, There are systems that are materialistic. There are systems that are competitive. And there are systems that ultimately lead to conflict, civil conflict, conflict between nations, and ultimately wars. And of course, we can see that at the present time with the expansion of NATO around Russia. It's the desire to destroy Russia and maintain American and European hegemony of the world. It's important that we understand these things, and it's important that we have an open mind. Because again, mind is what creates, and we can achieve anything that we wish through our intellect and our creative ability, which is our God-given gift. And this is how we are made in the image of God, because then we can be co-creators. If you can access, I'm looking for that gentleman who gave us that fantastic poem, I am. But if you can access your I amness, that is your oneness with your Creator. If you can really say, I am, and you're not I am that, or you're not I am this, you're simply I am. It means that you have understood your mind, and you've understood yourself, and you've understood your oneness with creation. When you have been able to achieve that, now that takes a certain amount of work. We're not going to go into how you're able to get to that, but this is your responsibility to be able to achieve that understanding of self. Self-knowledge is of extreme importance. Of course, you obtain some of that self-knowledge through education, and that's why you're here, many of you, at a place like Medgar, to be educated. But the understanding is that education brings something out of you. As you know, the etymology is from the Latin ex ducere, the lead out of. And what it leads out is your spiritual essence. It teaches you to look at your mind and remove the obstacles of mind, remove the conditioning of mind, so that you can see your true self and then access your true self, so that you can be able to say, I am. When you can say, I am, then you can project that into the society around you. And then you can share the gifts that you have as a human being with your family, with your society, with your workplace, with your nation, and with the world. But that is the work that has to be done, because we're still mentally incarcerated by scientific materialism, which considers only matter and only mind as important. And that is only looking at the superficial characteristics of who and what we are as human beings. Because we are spiritual entities, and if we understand spirit, we know that spirit has no border. Spirit is energy, and spirit is consciousness. Energy is the second law of thermodynamics. The energy can neither be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. That's who we are. Our energy can only be transformed. There's birth and there's death, but life continues. Our energy is life. Consciousness has no border, no boundary. And again, that's who we are, essentially, consciousness and energy. If we can access that, then we'll find that we have no obstacles. We can stand anywhere, and as Marcus Garvey said, if you have confidence in self, then you're one even before you started, because you have that potential. If you understand self is one with cosmic self, there's nothing that can obstruct you, and you'll not be afraid of anything, because you're not afraid of death, because there's birth and there's death, but life continues. And your life. And our ancestors, we believe in reincarnation. We believe in our ancestors. Our ancestors are here. They've given birth to us, and we'll give birth to another generation, and it's a cycle. So there's nothing to fear. We can be ourselves. And the greatest power that we have is not power over others, but the power to be ourselves continuously, our true selves continuously, in the face of whatever the obstacle may be. We do have that capacity. And Marcus Garvey said, man is the individual who can shape his character, master his will, direct his life, and create his own destiny. Now that's enormous power. And we have that power. And we have to utilize that power. The power to be ourselves continuously. That's the greatest power in the world, not atomic energy. As Bob Marley would say, have no fear for atomic energy, for none of them can stop the time. The power that you have is greater than atomic energy, because it's the energy source. It's connected to the energy source. So we have to chart our own course. And I think we understand that the system in which we live is a broken system. Again, it's made up of a philosophy of scientific materialism. However, the science has shown at this point in time, in terms of quantum physics, etc., and going back to Einstein, E equals mc squared, and so on, he understood matter was simply slow-moving energy. But now the physicists have continued, and they understand that the source of matter, and even the source of energy, if you will, is consciousness. Because when you get down to the subquantum level, that's where consciousness operates. And so that consciousness is primary. Matter is not primary. Consciousness precedes matter. So again, they understand that we're spiritual beings, we're conscious beings. Again, consciousness and energy. And that goes back to our ancestors. The original Trinity is Amun, Ra, and Ptah. Amun is consciousness, Ra is energy, and Ptah is information. And that is what created the universe. And that is what we have, very much as a drop of water to an ocean. We are this sort of holographic part of the cosmos. And everything that is source, we have within us, and we're connected to that source. So we're spiritual beings having a physical existence in a three-dimensional world. But we have to look at the world then as being a sacred place. And we're connected with everything. If we have systems that destroy the environment, then we'll be destroying ourselves, because we're one with the environment. And we can see that the system, particularly the Industrial Revolution of the last 200 years, has created global warming and climate change. And we're very close to a disaster of the planet in terms of the weather that is happening and that is coming. Many of us are from the Caribbean, and we've seen the hurricanes get. I remember when I was a boy, there wasn't a hurricane that was over 100 miles an hour. And now they're 150 miles an hour and so on. We see earthquakes increasing. We see droughts and we see floods and all the conditions of climate change. And this is because the system of scientific materialism and industrialization is an unnatural system, and it has been destroying nature, utilizing the resources of nature while at the same time destroying the purity of the water, the purity of the air, the purity of our food. So we are also slowly being poisoned. It's important for us to understand this because it's critical. It's also important that we do not think that this is the only way that the world can function in terms of globalization. Because if we believe that, then we're also signing our own or our children and grandchildren's death certificate. Because if things don't change, then the planet itself will be destroyed, which is our home, and we'll leave it to the viruses and the bacteria and the cockroaches and the rats. And that's real, it's absolutely real. And of course, the media is not going to tell you exactly how serious it is, but it's extremely serious. Now, it's difficult to change the system. And we know what has happened to many people who have tried to change the system, including my father, of course, J. Hoover and the FBI. But we've seen it also with Malcolm X, we've seen it with Martin Luther King. You know, they could get rid of my dad by criminalizing him and then deporting him. And they had to kill Malcolm, they had to kill Martin, they had to kill the Panthers and so on down the road. So when he comes up who tries to change the system, they're very much a target. I think it's important that we don't just allow our heroes to be targets, but we are the ones that have to bring about the change, whether we're foot soldiers or leaders in our own right. We have to bring about the change, and we have to change then first ourselves. And that's what we've been talking about for the last few minutes in terms of getting to that I am and knowing then that it's our responsibility to be the best that we can be. And secondary to that responsibility is to be the best or create the best society that you can live in terms, again, in terms of family, in terms of workplace, in terms of your country and so on. That's a responsibility. You can't shirk the responsibility, and you can't just live your life with entertainment, which of course is almost obligatory at the present time. We have so many gadgets to entertain us. And again, that's because the system doesn't want us to look at what the system is doing. The system is about greed and accumulation of wealth by 1% or 5% at the top, and everybody else is paying the price. But as I just mentioned, it's a dead-end system. So we have the responsibility of making the changes in ourselves, making the changes in our environment, and making the changes around us, whether it's our family, our friends, etc., or organizations, and so on. And while we may not be able to change the system completely overnight, but gradually, when we change ourselves, then the system will change. Because we will not accommodate the system. We will not buy the products that the system is making. We will not live the way the system tells us to live. And we can go through a whole litany of ways in which we can do that. But that would take us too far afield. But many of you know that in terms of what you eat and the cars that you drive, the clothes that you wear, the unnecessary things that you have. You need to look at yourselves in terms of your behavior, what you do on a day-to-day basis, what you can do better, how you can transform yourself, and how you can not only make yourself better, but make the world a better place. And it's your responsibility. And this is the reason why our ancestors fought so hard in terms of liberation. But it's liberation not to join the system that had enslaved us. It's liberation to be free from that system and to be able to create our own systems based on our own traditions and culture. We're still struggling with that. We haven't been able to do that. But obviously, we've made steps in that direction. For example, the educational processes that are here for the students, they help to transform their minds. But this needs to be spread, and it needs to be understood that it's not just an intellectual game per se in terms of having knowledge, but one has to put that knowledge to use. And that's the purpose of knowledge. If you're not using the knowledge and using it correctly, then it's really is wasted. And we have to get that sense of urgency that every day we can be better. Every day we can do something that will bring about the change that we need to see. And if we get up every morning and you can say, I am, as that young man told us, then we'll be able to do that. Because if you are who you are, then the system cannot encompass you. You're bigger than the system. Because as I mentioned before, your energy and your spirit, no system can hold you enthralled. There are no obstacles. There's no height to which you cannot climb. There are no obstacles that you cannot overcome. And again, all you have to do is look at our history and see what our ancestors have done, where we have come from. And it's not just the last 400 years, but again, it's from the beginning of humanity. We have traveled around the world. We have populated the whole world. Every human being on planet Earth derives from us. We've populated the whole world. We've civilized the whole world. We've created just about everything, all the firsts, whether it's agriculture, whether it's building, construction, it's medicine, education, universities, psychology, science, etc., etc. All of those are first. You know, when somebody nowadays come up and say, oh, he's the first black guy to do this or that, it's nonsense. We did all the first. Don't believe that foolishness. We're first in everything. And everything else is a copy or a transformation of what we did. So, the black skin is not a badge of shame, but a symbol of our greatness. And if you can say, I am, then you're understanding your greatness, and you're understanding your potential, and your ability to change yourself, and to change the world, and make the world a better place. And quite frankly, the world needs us. The world is waiting for us to make the change. Because we are the ones that have the ability, we are the ones that have the history, we are the ones that have the knowledge that goes back to Kemet, etc. So it's up to us to change the world and make it a better place. And of course, I know you can do it. Why? Well, my father said, oh, you mighty people, you can accomplish what you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garvey, for that inspiring lecture. With your permission, we will allow a few questions from the audience. We have a floor mic set up on this side, so if you would like to ask a question, please line up and give me 1 second. Let me just make sure your mic is. Oh, you are good? Yeah. All right. All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, good evening. I wish I was there to have you trademark your name for Dr. J, right? Way back, sure you got your degree in probably in the 60s. You say your doctorate, safe to say? All right, I want to make a connection for you in this building. As a teenager, I used to sneak into the classes here. And fortunately, I was able to meet Dr. Betty Shabazz walking around. She used to wave at me and she'd say hello until I warmed up to her. And she's married to Malcolm X. Malcolm X's father was a Garvey. He petitioned Calvin Coolidge to have your father released from jail so you could be born. So I think that's amazing, all associated with this building. But my question to you is for you to take us through the internal dynamics with you, your brother, and mom at home. And I think your father died when you were probably around 7 years old, right? 1940, 1933, around then. Your brother was probably 3 years older than you. I wanted to know what that was like being in the house as you're finding out more and more about your father, the philosophy, maybe some of the debates and arguments that took place in your house, including your mom too.
Yeah, I guess I would take this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there weren't really real debates and arguments in the house per se, because the last time I saw my father, I was 5 years old, and this was in England. He left Jamaica, went to England in 1935, and he took us with him, and we stayed there until I guess it was 1937. We came back because my brother had a problem with arthritis because of the damp weather. So the last time I saw my dad, I was 5 years old. So, the memories of him are, just childhood memories of going to the movies and, that sort of thing, buying the candy and throwing snowballs in the backyard, that kind of stuff. The understanding of who my father was, etc., was given to me by my mother, who was his right-hand man, if you will, in terms of the organization, as well as his wife. And she really carried on the organization, certainly in Jamaica, as well as trying to hold it together internationally. So she brought us up, meaning myself and my older brother, with an understanding of what the struggle was all about, what my dad was all about, and her part in it. So we had that kind of, shall we say, Pan-African, Afrocentric household. My mother never remarried. She never brought anybody else into the house. So my father was always my father, and he was always present. So even though it was a single parent upbringing, my dad was always there, being represented by my mom. And so she gave me the understanding of who and what my father was about.
Greetings, Dr. Garvey. It's great having you here in this historical institution that bears the name of Medgar Evers, and to be among us, the common people that Mr. Garvey fought and died for. Right? There's been something that as a people we have been toying around with for decades, and that is about the exoneration of your father, clearing his name and so forth. And in my humble opinion, as an elder, reading Mr. Garvey and studying Mr. Garvey and what he stood for, I don't believe Mr. Garvey would be one to endorse this movement. For me personally, I believe what we should be doing, using that energy to, since we are here in the state where that crime against Mr. Garvey was committed. I think with all the political leadership that we have here, and the Democratic Party is so much in you know, they owe us a lot. Why is it we cannot get the scholars, the academic scholars, all these fellows we are running around the place, we have them in the Supreme Court, we have them all over the place, we have them here in the city. Why can't we get them, the cubs of Mr. Garvey, to take up that case, open up that case right here in New York, and instead of begging the oppressors to clear this man's name, we are going to open up the case, fight the case in court, let the young people see that we care about this great man that sacrificed so much for us. And let it be published and all over the world so we can reopen up again that case of Mr. Garvey. I think that would do more for the development and the advancement of our race than to keep begging. Let our children see us begging the oppressors to pardon this man. And before, if I could just throw something else in there and get out of the way. I would like to ask your opinion on where we stand with the UNIA, the ACL, of that great organization that Mr. Garvey had created. Because Mr. Garvey put a timeline on things that we should have done back in the day, and we're way past that timeline. And I don't know what the UNIA is doing. Are you associated or involved with the UNIA movement or guiding them? What is it? Mr. Garvey wanted to use Liberia as the staging ground for the development and advancement of our people in the African continent. Where are we? Mr. Garvey didn't have any relative or anybody in Liberia, right? Now we have a movement, and I don't know where are we going? Where is the UNIA movement? Where does it stand? What is your opinion on the matter, sir?
Okay. I guess I'll deal first with the exoneration of my dad. I appreciate your passion. We've been working on the exoneration of my dad since 1987, which was the centenary of his birth. People such as Congressman Rangel and John Conyers have introduced House resolutions over time. We appeared before the House Judiciary Committee in 1987. If you appreciate the political situation here in the United States, you know, it's difficult to get a quorum in terms of a resolution such as that, in terms of exoneration. But this has been done and was reintroduced time and time again by Congressman Rangel every couple of years, but things change, the Republicans are in power, the Democrats are in power, it goes through the Congress, etc., etc. Even up to the present time, your Congresswoman from Brooklyn, Yvette Clark, she has House Resolution 148 before the Congress, and it's now in the House Judiciary Committee. In 2016, we tried another approach because we had a black president. It was his second term, and towards the end of his second term, so we thought that he could do a posthumous presidential pardon, stating that Marcus Garvey committed no crime and it was an injustice. Our law firm that we've had working on it over the years submitted everything to the president. It was handed to him, but he did not take any action at that particular time. We're pursuing the same thing again now with President Biden. We didn't do that with Trump, but we're pursuing the same thing again with President Biden. So we've written letters, the law firm has written letters to Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris, who has Jamaican ancestry. They have not responded. We have been in contact with different members of the Congress, the Congressional Black Congress, and they're pursuing this at the present time. So we have not done what you've talked about in terms of New York, but certainly that's one approach that also can be done in terms of opening the case, and because the conviction was in New York, and overturning the verdict. So that's another option. The second part of your question was about the UNIA. There are many branches of the UNIA, both in Jamaica and Costa Rica and Panama, here in the United States and in Canada. There is one branch, the branch in Queens. They're also in Liberia. As a matter of fact, the president of Liberia, however you pronounce his name, his wife is Jamaican, and the head of the UNIA from Queens is her brother. So they have land there, they're working there, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Next question.
Sorry, sir. Let's get another one. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Garvey, for being here. I have a question. You studied your father, and your mother sort of shared a lot of information, and you've done a lot of studying of Black people and movement. So if your dad will go back into a time machine, what would he do differently, you think, when you think about some of the things, when you think about some of the criticism from people like Du Bois and other people? What do you think he would do differently, or would he do anything differently?
If he did anything differently, I'd be very disappointed anyway. I'd just like to say about Du Bois, I think he was an arrogant intellectual who didn't understand himself, and he admitted it. He said he had a double consciousness. What does that mean? That means he doesn't know who he is. He couldn't say, I am, like the young man said before. My father said he had an original African mind. He didn't have two consciousnesses, one African consciousness. That was Marcus Garvey. Du Bois didn't know who he was, okay?
Greetings, Dr. Garvey. An honor to have you here this evening. I grew up probably about 5 minutes from where your father gave his first speech in Harlem. And I would often walk past the church as a sign of inspiration, I'm a little younger. And one of the question that I had for you was, what advice would you give to a younger person that's seeing what's happening? We obviously seen that it's recycled in regards to institutional racism and things that we're experiencing, your generation, my parents' generation, whatnot. What advice would you give to someone like myself that's hoping that things can change, or want to see change?
Again, it's sort of similar to what I said during the talk, is that you have to be the change that you want to see. If you understand yourself, institutional racism can present itself as an obstacle, but it cannot deter you from being who you are and what you want to do. It may make your life a little bit more difficult in terms of the obstacles that you have to overcome. You have to go another route. You may not be able to go directly. Like if you're a businessman out there, you may not be able to go to the Silicon Valley or whatever and get $1 million for your project. You might have to go around the neighborhood and get your buddies and your friends to help you to develop your business. But that's your responsibility. That's what you have to do. You can't just hope that the system will change for the better. I don't believe in this business of keep hope alive. I believe in direct action, but the direct action is what you do. And it's the same thing. God won't work for you. So when you're praying and you're praying to God, if you think that you're praying to God out there, then God is not going to do anything for you. God will work through you because He's given you all the potential at birth for you to be anything that you want to be. So, it's personal responsibility. And that's the only way you're going to bring about the change, when you have changed in yourself so that whatever the obstacles are, you can overcome them. And I believe then we shall overcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Greetings, Dr. Garvey. My question is not so intellectual, just a simple question. I'm trying to make some connections here. I grew up in Jake's Road. I saw you were there. I used to play in Amy Jake's Garvey's yard.
What's your last name, sir?
Not very, well, Perkins is the last name. But when
I guess that was after my time. I don't remember Perkins from back in the day.
Right, the house is on like a little curve right in the corner. I was looking where the stage was set up, and I'm trying to put it into perspective. Were you inside of the yard doing that function, or were you across the street from the yard?
Okay, I had two, what he's referring to, I was just back in Jamaica. And I just came back 2 days ago. And one of the things that was done by the community there, where we grew up, and my mother's father and grandfather had property. And the road there is called Jake's Road. It's the Jake's Road community. It's been revitalized, and they've done a mural on the community center and named it the Amy Jake's Garvey Community Center. So we were there for those celebrations. So we had a function inside when I went there, which was the Monday. I went the Sunday. I arrived in Jamaica the Sunday. I went there the Monday. And then when I was leaving on the Friday, we were outside because they had a lot of different artists performing on the stage outside.
Let me just add to that. You grew up in that yard at Jake's Road?
I grew up at 2.5 Jake's Road, which was like the first house on Jake's Road when you enter from coming from below. Yeah.
No,
from Mountain View, but from below. Yeah.
I'm trying to put it into perspective. This is my big question. I was hoping to keep it for a private conversation, but I'm going to expose it because I suspect it's you. There was one of the sons that used to do an athletic activity. Were you into athletics? Were you a field person?
I played cricket, I played soccer, I played tennis, I played table tennis, I swam, I dived, I did all of those things.
But the big one is, did you do pole balls?
No, I never
pole balls. Oh, so it wasn't you. Pole balls. I remember because I was like maybe 6, 7 at the time.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't know what to do. But, I knew your mom.
Yeah.
And so Amy Jakes was your mother.
Yes.
Yes. Because funny enough, you should know there were actually 2 Amy's. The first one is Amy. The first wife was
Amy, actually.
The second one is Amy. And so I knew Amy. She was a very nice lady, very sociable. She would talk to us as kids. She wasn't a standoffish person. I guess coming out of where she was coming from. So hopefully I want to talk to you when it's over.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right.
We will have opportunities for you to speak to Dr. Garvey afterwards. Next question, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Garvey. Thank you for your words of inspiration. I know that you're a frequent visitor to the African continent. I'm sure you're aware of the Ghana's program, Africa or African Renaissance, 2020 to 2023. 2030, I'm sorry. I was wondering if you wanted to offer any of your opinions about that proposition.
No, nothing specific. I mean, we were last there in August of last year, and we went in 2019, the year of return. And they do have, a program to sort of invite us back. They've been giving citizenship and so on to a number of diaspora people who are living there and have lived there all the time. And, President Adu has made some, very strong statements in terms of Pan-Africanism, shall we say. He's trying to develop Ghana itself in terms of the cocoa industry and so on. And he is the head of the African, the headquarters of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is based in Ghana, which is a very, very progressive move in order to shall we say, increase the intra-African trade, which I think is what is going to really help Africa in the near and the long-term future. So The things I know about the Ghanaian government are positive.
I take it you're optimistic now. I take it you're optimistic about the program?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have 3 more questions, and then we are going to move on to the next stage.
I am the I am. And I want to say thank you to Professor Russell for starting off this evening with I am the I am. And Dr. Garvey, thank you very much for a major part of your presentation about consciousness and self. I would like if you can just shed light a little on the Garvey Institute and some of the principles of the Garvey Institute. Thank you.
Well, basically, we're creating, shall we say, the Marcus Garvey Institute for Human Development. And as the name suggests, it has a pretty broad perspective in terms of its mission. And I think something of what I said in terms of my address, that we really don't understand the full potential of us as human beings, because we've been incarcerated by a system that thinks only in terms of mind, body as entity, and the individual is separate from everything else. Whereas we are conscious beings, and consciousness is primary. So I think if we understand that, we're able to access our full potential as human beings, and access our creativity. Because that's how we are made in the image of God, our Creator, which again, as I mentioned, is not a person up there or out there, but is consciousness, energy, and information. That's what creation is all about. And if you can access that, then using your will in terms of your intentionality, then you can create yourself, and you can also create the environment in which you live. So that's a potential that each and every one of us has. And, you know, it's not been understood, it's not been taught, and most of the systems that present themselves from the Eurocentric perspective are limiting systems, whether it's religion, in terms of certain dogma and certain ritual, whereas religion should really be, again, real like area, binding you back to yourself. So the religion should be pointing you back to yourself, as opposed to pointing you outside yourself to a God or to a system that is going to somehow save you. So, you know, that's the purpose of the organization, and it's panoramic, if you will. It's both, you know, spiritual as well as in terms of health and wellness, in terms of entrepreneurship, and the whole panoply, shall we say, of human endeavor. We need to rethink and repurpose, and that's what the Institute is all about.
Dr. Garvey, I just want to say thank you for carrying on the work of your father, and thank you for your inspiring words. Just a real quick question. It's my understanding that there are schools in Jamaica that have begun teaching the philosophies and principles of your father's work. Are you aware that there's work going on in other countries that these teachings will also continue?
I'm not aware of this in other countries, no. And the purpose of my visit just now in Jamaica was relative to teaching Marcus Garvey in schools. There's been a significant effort there along those lines. And I'm happy to say that the Ministry of Education has now approved it. So the curriculum it's taken a long, hard fight. I mean, you wouldn't believe that we've been independent since 1962, but our first national hero, we're not teaching him in schools. I don't know how we expect to have good citizens when, you know, we don't teach, you know, character and the struggles that we've gone through and a liberating philosophy. So hopefully now we'll be starting with the 5 and 6-year-olds, and we'll go including up to the high schools and probably tertiary as well over time. So, it will be a bit of a prototype in terms of curriculum, teacher training, and so on and so forth. So we'd like to then broaden it everywhere in the Caribbean here, as well as on the continent.
Thank you.
First off, let me start by saying,
Isn't it past your bedtime?
honored to be in your presence, and I have one quick question. What do you think is the most important thing or the most impactful thing that you experienced, been a part of, or even created in your lifetime? And how do you think people in my generation can build off of that, or how do you think we can get more people in the generation to be a part of being?
Interesting question, because kind of two-part. The most impactful thing in my lifetime, I don't think there's a thing in that sense, but there's always been my quest to understand myself. And I believe self-knowledge is the most important thing for any individual. There is knowledge, meaning book knowledge. You go to school and you learn, read page 1 to 10 and come back and the teacher will test you about it and that kind of knowledge. But there's another kind of knowledge which is self-knowledge. And that is something that you have to spend time with yourself. And you have to have a system, because it's a process. And the more you get to know yourself, then the more you're able to open yourself and access your true potential as a human being. Because again, the society in which you live, even your own parents would not understand your own full potential because they've been brought up in the system. So it's a system that repeats itself cyclically, and it doesn't allow you to go outside of that conditioning, which again, as I mentioned, is scientific materialism, but even the science now has gone beyond that. So it's time for us to recognize that, and that has always been the African perspective, that consciousness is primary, spirit is important, and we need to access our spirit and then be able to manifest that. So that has sort of been a process for me, so that, the more I understood myself, the more the happier I was, so to speak, as a person, and to be able to say I am who I am, because that's what it's all about. Because when you have that degree of self-knowledge, then nobody can tell you who you are or what to do. You're a master of yourself, and you can be whatever it is that you want to be. So I would advise a system of trying to get to know yourself mentally. And, you can call it meditation if you want, you can call it self-inquiry, you can call it contemplation, whatever you want to call it. But you need to look at your mind, because your mind is what controls your functioning and what determines the environment in which you live. So if you can master your mind, if you will, then you can master the circumstances of your life.
Thank you. I will take one last question for this segment.
I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to make a statement. My name is Malik, and I'm a member of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Now, this movement is a Garveyite movement. And the reason why it's a Garveyite movement is because Garvey was one of the original African internationalists. And that's what we consider ourselves to be, African internationalists.
By the way, is that the same as the socialist movement?
Yes, Shaleti.
Okay.
Yes.
So
maybe you want to explain that a little bit in terms of the connection.
Well, we believe that if we got on the boat as Africans, we got off the boat as Africans. We don't have all these different identities, false identities that we've been saddled with. That's why we consider ourselves African internationalists. We've carried on the tradition of Marcus Garvey so well, in fact, that on July 29th, the government, in the form of the FBI, attacked our movement, right? They attacked our movement in 6 different locations: St. Louis, St. Petersburg, and they attacked our chairman with flashbang grenades, with assault rifles, everything you can imagine. But it was not just an attack on the Uhuru movement, it was an attack on the freedom movement of African people all over the world. You know, it wasn't just an attack on the Uhuru movement. So this discussion on this tonight is very important. We're continuing that tradition. And what we're saying is that we have a movement right now called Hands Off Uhuru, right? The movement is about uniting all our people to get behind this offense rather, against the FBI and the government that is trying to destroy our movement the same way they tried to destroy the Panthers in the 60s. They defined the Panthers as the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. That's why they attacked that movement. And obviously they consider us the vanguard, the movement that is going to achieve anti-colonialism in our lifetime. You know? So one of the reasons why we call ourselves the Uhuru movement is that Uhuru was a term that Africans greeted each other in Kenya in their struggle against British colonialism. And when they greeted each other with the term Uhuru, which is freedom in Swahili. And when they departed from each other, they also said Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili. So right now, I'd like to get a big Uhuru from everybody in the audience.
All right, thank you very much for that. We are honored at this time to be.
We have one student who just wanted to say one last thing.
Oh, sure. No. We always have time for one student. That's what you know.
Hello. Hi. So I just want to say I am extremely grateful to be here tonight, especially being a Jamaican myself. I was born in the islands, and we have heard so much about the movement of Marcus Garvey. He was such a great inspiration, not just in Jamaica, as was discussed earlier here, but throughout the whole United States of America, Africa, and every other island and country that represent Black people, represent Black power, Black liberation, Black empowerment. I'm extremely proud to be here. I just want to say thank you. God bless you.
That's in the one talk about myself. I did. No, I didn't. All right. As I was saying, we're honored to be joined at this point in time by the president of Medgar College, Dr. Patricia Ramsey. And I wanted to invite her to the stage just to make a couple of brief remarks. I know I'm putting her on the spot, so she's giving me the look.
Well, hello, everyone. Greetings. I feel always bad when I come into any event late, but we had competing events tonight, and so the provost, one started at 6 and the other at 6:30. So the provost left and came here. I stayed upstairs, and it was out a little bit earlier, so I was able to come here, and I'm so glad that I was able to be here. When I said, oh my goodness, I really, really wish that I could be here for the entire event, because we had such a great opportunity here at the college tonight with Dr. Garvey. But we had a great event upstairs as well. But I never like getting in front of an audience. without saying Medgar Evers College, just based on what was just said, birthed out of the Black community in central Brooklyn, the only college, the only four-year college in this country that is named for a slain civil rights leader, Medgar Wiley Evers. And that is so important for me to say everywhere, because what I have found is that usually in the audience, there's going to be at least one person that didn't know that. And so I tell that story. I am proud to be president of Medgar Evers College, because for me, it's about making a difference as a community. And if we work together as a community, not just the people inside of the college walls, but out in the community as well, we can really turn this city upside down. Because we know that if we do whatever we do together, then nothing can stop us. And so I thank you all for allowing me to come. I had said in the back, no, I don't need to go up front. I don't need to say anything. I'm like, no, you have to go up front. But I'm pleased to be able to just to greet you all, and thank you all so much for coming. This is just such a blessing for me to see all of you here and to give such great support for our guests. So thank you again.
I'm going to ask you to stay on the stage, you guys, for a quick second as we here for this last closing segment.
Before I get into providing our lecturer this evening with a small token of our appreciation, I want to remind you, right, that one of Garvey's teachings is, self-reliance, right, and self-empowerment, and we need your help, right? We talked earlier about, not going to the oppressors or to the others and relying on them for our own uplift. And in order for us to continue doing the work that we do, which is to bring you, we think, of vibrant and vital conversations, interdisciplinary conversations, not just about the Caribbean American experience, about the Black experience, about the uplift of our people, we do need your support. So please note that on the backdrop behind us, there is a QR code allowing for you to make a donation this evening. I know some of you donated on the way in. It doesn't matter how small the donation is. We definitely welcome big donations. There are no objections there. Yes, please, scan the code, and if possible, if you can, please add to our to supporting our efforts. All right, having said that, I want to invite a couple of people up on stage. So Dr. De Longoria, would you mind joining me on stage? Dr. Coleman, would you mind joining me on stage? And Mr. Ray Allen from our advisory board, would you mind please joining me on stage as we present the CRC Speaker Award to Dr. Julius Garvey. The award that we give to all of our participants in the CRC Speaker Series. And it reads, Caribbean Research Center, Medgar Evers College of the City University of New York. The CRC Speaker Award presented to Dr. Julius Garvey in recognition of his participation in the 2023 CRC Speaker Series on this date of February 28th, 2023.
Yes, I did.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
All right.
All right.
How we can do this? Take it back? All right, okay. I get to take it back. It's all right.
Now you can present. Okay.
You got it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Gotta
All right.
organize y'all.
Listen, I
So
was
you,
never good at this.
Now it looks like you're receiving.
No, it looks like Can I give it back now? Okay, there we go. All right.
Thank you.
All right, look at him first.
Stay right there. One more. Thank you.
Actually, hold on, I forgot somebody. Horace, come on, get up here. How did I? Wait, I'm so sorry, Horace. Yeah, it's happened. Yeah, let's get that out of the way. Let's make sure we can fit you in here. I apologize, Horace. No problem. Man, you should have shouted at me, bro. It's been a long day. All right, let's try that again, guys.
Go ahead.
At least they're being coached.
One more.
Situations.
Can you turn it a little to
This way? You got it.
Okay.
Thank you. And please don't leave there. We got one more? Or Nori? Okay, no. Nori, you taking a picture? Or you? I'm so sorry. Dr. Garvey, we did anticipate that your wife was going to be joining you this evening. Yes, so I was told, but I was told you might be seeing her shortly. On Thursday? Okay, well, that's right, we'll put in some water. And so on behalf of the Caribbean Research Center, and in recognition that all you do is with us supporting. There we go.
Yes.
All right. Thanks very much. No problem. And with that, we bring this evening's program to an end. Once again, thank you all for joining us. And please look out for our upcoming programs. On June 15th, we have the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, who will be speaking again right here at the CRC Speaker Series. Stay well, everyone. Hi, how are you? I'm great.